This content contains podcast. This adult
contains podcast content.
Adult content, be advised. Enjoy the episode.
You can beat me over the head with it. I'm 5. But it's
Interesting. What are you beating 5-year-olds over the head with?
messages. Are we recording?
We are,
Okay.
yes.
Good evening.
Good way to start. Meg's ill.
I'm sorry.
So forgive her voice. How's everyone's week been?
Not great.
No, well,
Or I've since last recording, but not since last episode. I've aged.
we all have, Laura.
I've aged a milestone,
Oh, of course, yes.
and
What did you think she meant?
Well, we all age.
Yeah, but it was her birthday 2 days
Yeah.
ago.
and I passed my upgrade. So
Well done.
to anyone who doesn't know what that means, it's just after the first year of your PhD, they check in to see if you've actually spent your time working.
And you prove that you spent the last 2 months working.
Or it was way more than that, because I genuinely,
No.
if I had
I
tried,
know, but it was
you
funny.
guys really don't think I work.
No. I know.
No,
you
we
do.
don't.
Yes, I do think you work. So I've had an all right week. Right. So
No
this,
one asked. You asked us.
right. I know it's really boring when.
Are you going to talk about your dream?
Yeah. It's really boring when people talk to you about their dreams, right? But
Yeah.
Depends. I think if it's like really off the walls.
No one says, "Oh, listen to this dream I had," and no one goes, "Oh, yay!"
no, they don't. But
I don't mind it. It genuinely depends. You two, fine. Strangers, nah.
But I had this dream, and as soon as I woke up, I was like, I've got to tell someone. I've got to tell. And I thought, oh, I've got a podcast. Maybe I'll.
I'll force tons of people to listen.
Yeah. So
I don't know if I would describe our listener base as tons.
Try and fit them all in the house.
Actually, that is so true. As soon as I said it, I thought, I wonder what the combined weight of
how much would they all cost to post?
I saw today that the number of flies on the planet is equivalent to 17 million per person. So weigh in the amount of flies.
Sorry, Elsie.
No,
tell us
yeah.
about
So
your dream.
So basically, it was very, very, very normal. I was sitting about my room. I was pottering about the kitchen, and the only different thing about I was existing in a universe where everything was the same, but Armstrong and Miller, they didn't have like their own brand of lube, but they did have like a line of lube, like they'd done some sort of like collab partnership with Durex or something. And this wasn't normal to me in the dream. It was unusual. So like I was getting my phone out and tweeting like, does anyone else think it's properly weird that Armstrong and Miller have a line of lube?
Did they do only lube, or were there condoms to
No,
accompany the lube?
it was just lube. It was just lube with
That's not safe.
with Armstrong and Miller's names on. That
Yeah,
they-
Sorry. What if you need your condoms to match your lube? What then?
who needs that? I don't.
You know those women that like everything to be like it's a full underwear set. You've got to wear
Well,
matching socks.
yeah,
It's got
okay.
everything in the house has to be part of a
Well, no,
set.
they didn't. It was just they were just the faces of lube, except their faces weren't in it. It was just their names. And also in this scenario, Miller was a woman. So in my head, I was like, oh, Armstrong and Miller, that man and woman
So
that own that lube.
Your
thing.
brain just plucked 2 names out of the ether.
No, because they're real.
No, I know. But I mean, like, if there's no names and you change the gender of one of them, you just here's a duo.
No, but the weird thing is that up until the point where I had this dream, I had never seen a single episode of Armstrong and Miller. And if they are not on the TV, I could go for years without thinking about them. Like, no offense or anything, but like they're not in my
zeitgeist.
No, they're not, you know? So when I woke up, I was like, how on earth did they get there?
How did they get into my zeitgeist?
How did they get into my lube?
and in the dream, I walked into Meg's room and I said, Meg, don't you think it's just utterly weird that they have this thing? Why do they have this thing? And Meg said, oh, because Armstrong loves to fuck. Because she's very funny even in my dreams.
Quick poll. If it existed, would you use it?
Depends on the price.
I don't see why not.
I think, I'm not being funny, but I think if that came out, I would have to own it. If they were like,
especially if it was limited edition.
Yeah, limited edition Armstrong and Miller Durex lube. Sign me up. I don't see how it would be any different to any other
The
lube.
taste of the 2000s.
Brother,
Gross. Enough about lube. We're talking about Thomas the Tank Engine today.
They definitely need lube.
Thomas the Tank Engine themed lube, guys.
No.
Oh.
There probably is like vehicle.
Yeah, that's engine
grease.
oil.
That's grease, Laura.
You've not been using that, have you?
Don't put grease in your arsehole.
In the States, there's like the lube is more viewed as a vehicle thing rather than a sexual thing first. Like, if that makes sense. If you say lube, people think not of sexual lube.
Like lubricant.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the full word, yes.
Well, I know, but when someone says lube, they tend to mean it in a sexual way. If someone says lubricant, I'm thinking door hinges.
Laura, when you...
That's not going in.
Yes,
Stop.
it is.
No, it isn't. I don't want it to go in.
Okay, I don't need it to be in. I just have only just thought of it.
Yeah, I have thought of it. I have thought of it.
Did you try it?
Yes.
Did you?
Yes.
What did you lube it with?
Lube.
I have lube
lube.
it with like butter.
Why is that the first thing you would think of?
Sorry,
and not
olive
actual
oil.
lube?
Because we're Northern Europe. We're Northern Europe. Did it help?
Yeah.
Great.
Why should I keep my passengers waiting while Henry and James dawdle about all day on viaducts?
She proper looks like a radio girly. Do you know what I mean?
No.
Oh, you look like a radio girly.
Do I look nice?
Your nipples look amazing.
Thanks.
Giving Rachel and Friends.
Am I?
She wore turtlenecks and
Thanks.
nipples.
Am I?
My dad worked at radio when he was a teenager. Like, he worked at BBC Radio 4, I think. He was a teenager or BT Tower. I can't remember. Anyway.
There's a difference between BBC Radio 4 and working at the BT Tower.
He worked in radio. Anyway.
Can we first of all agree that Thomas the Tank Engine has a banging theme tune?
Yes.
What?
Biggie Smalls.
What a deep groove. Meg there is referring to the Biggie Smalls Thomas the Tank Engine mashup.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Yeah. Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Come on, motherfuckers, come on. Release the brainstorm to make your motherfucking brain warm. A strange form, something kind of lyrical. Biggie the bastard, so that's kind of spiritual. Well, in God we trust, guns are bust. Got that disgusting suicide thumping. And do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things that I bring? I got 7 like 11.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on.
Like, I keep calling it Thomas the Tank Engine. It's actually called Thomas and Friends.
There's actually been like 6 different names for it or something.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
is ridiculous. Just Thomas the Tank Engine.
It was based on a series of books by Reverend Wilbert Awdry. He was an Anglican vicar from Hampshire. The first book was published in 1945. There were 42 books in the series. It was based on real classes of locomotives. The lines were based on real lines in the British Isles. He was involved in railway preservation. He built model railways. You cannot understate how much this man loved him a train.
He thought of all his friends who liked engines, but strangely none of them would have room for a traction engine at home.
And not only did he write Thomas the Tank Engine,
He became a train.
He now is a train. You can ride him around the West Coast.
Beep, 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 beep. Hello, fat face, whistled Henry.
his biography is literally called The Thomas the Tank Engine Man. I'm not joking. And he wrote Thomas the Tank Engine, the books, but he also wrote an accompanying book called The Island of Sodor, Its People, Histories and Railways. He was the J.R.R. Tolkien of railways.
Did they get together and he go, I'm going to name mine Mordor, you can have Sodor?
That was very good. That was excellent, Laura.
Thanks.
Well done. So in The Island of Sodor, Its People, Histories and Railways, Awdry explained that Sodor was politically part of the United Kingdom. While the Isle of Man had retained home rule since the 15th century, Sodor had been attached to the Duchy of Lancaster, and it is therefore part of England, although this has not been allowed to disturb the Sudrians' independent lives. They also have their own language. He wrote the language of the Isle of Sodor.
He is the J.R.R. Tolkien of trains.
What's that? Asked Bill. Shh, whispered Ben. It's Gordon. It looks like Gordon, but it can't be. Gordon never comes on the branch lines. He thinks them vulgar.
Before trains, there wasn't I'm speaking within the UK, I don't know about globally. There wasn't a need to standardize time until trains, because prior to that, so there is a half-hour difference from one coast to the other on the UK about when the sun sets.
Yeah.
So each place used to have super, super local time. So it would be based on midday where you live. So there would be a bit of there'd be a 20-minute difference between here and Bristol. So the trains, the whole schedule was fucked. People kept missing their trains because it was usually went off of the hub that the train came from. So it wasn't the same time as to where it was going or where it was leaving from. So everyone was like, this is fucking chaos. We need structured time. So part of the reason the UK condensed under GMT is for the trains.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Could you imagine you like I said this to us, it's like you cross through two counties and you're like, right, everyone put your clocks back 15 minutes.
Come on, motherfuckers, come on.
The fictional native language of Sodor is Sudric or Sudrian, a Goidelic language similar to Manx. Anyone know what that means?
Manx is what they speak on Isle of Man.
Right, well, there you go.
Oh. It sounds like he just made another Isle of Man, to be honest.
It does sound like that.
Is he
doesn't
from
it?
the Isle of Man?
No, he's from Hampshire. So the reason he was interested in trains is because he lived near a rail and
We all lived near rail.
well, he lived so close that when he was sleeping at night, he could hear them outside. So this is what I'm quoting from Awdry himself. So this is from Wikipedia. Awdry could hear them from his bed, listening to the coded whistle signals between the train engine and the banker, as well as the sharp bark from the locomotive exhausts as they fought their way up the incline. Awdry said, there was no doubt in my mind that the steam engines all had definite personalities, and I would hear them snorting up the grade, and little imagination was needed to hear in the puffings and pantings of the two engines the conversation they were having with one another. That's quite cute, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not true. They weren't talking to each other.
Okay.
Maybe it's not.
All
Maybe
right. Well, I mean, we were talking the other day, weren't we, about how, I assign personalities and ages to numbers, and everyone associates, days with colours and that sort of thing.
Not everyone, but
no,
yeah.
but a lot of people do. So I think I kind of relate to him in that way.
So he's had it in his head since he was 10.
Yeah, so the first books are supposed to take place in the 20s.
Right.
And there's kind of absolutely no way of discerning that. There isn't really any indication in them that they are taking place in that time, because it's all kind of old-timey, the same.
Yeah.
And also steam trains. Like, it's taking place in,
Steam train
the
time.
90s. It goes up to the 90s.
Yeah.
And they're still,
The books.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
So his son Christopher did write and publish the last, like, handful of them. But I think 42 is the original number that Reverend Wilbert Awdry wrote. But yeah, when his son was very young, he would request his dad tell him these stories about the trains. And he wanted models of the trains, but due to wartime materials shortage...
You can't make trains. We need to make bullets.
Oh, we were supposed to watch Bullet Train, weren't we? Oh, well.
I did today. Again.
He could only make a tank engine, which is a smaller type of train.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, because you were like, oh, I found out what tank engine is, and I didn't ask further. So is it just a little train?
Kind of.
Okay.
So he made a tank engine model, and he was like, oh, Thomas was the natural name for it. So Thomas the Tank Engine was born. So Thomas actually wasn't the first character he came up with. So a tank engine has its water and fuel in the main
Tank.
tank. Yeah. So it's other types of locomotives have it in a carriage behind.
Right.
Tank engines have it all in one. I don't really understand how anything else could work. Like, if the fuel and the water is in a different carriage from the front bit, how is that? I don't understand.
The fuel, they just
Well, 'cause-
transport it
yeah.
in a separate carriage so it can go
'Cause the
further.
fuel's
It's
cold.
not gonna
Oh,
reduce the
sure.
train.
Yeah.
Because the fuel is coal,
Yeah,
and you're heating up the water. So presumably
Yeah.
it just gets brought into the engine bit
Sure.
when it's needed. Presumably. We don't know. We've never been on an old-timey train.
I have been on a steam train, actually.
We've never... Have you been on a...
No,
Oh,
I'd
okay.
like to. Every time I go to Victoria Station and there's one of those, like, steam
Orient
trains,
Express type thing.
yeah, like sitting in the platform and everyone's there, like, taking pictures of it, and I like to give a, like, side eye, like, losers, as I walk past, but they're so amazing and I really want to go on one.
One day, Meg, have you been to the York Railway
Yes.
Museum?
Yeah.
Don't scoff. It's a brilliant
Don't
museum.
and don't scoff.
It is a really good
Taken
museum.
straight from Cats the musical.
All his inventions are off
And
his
don't
own
scoff.
back. Don't scoff. Only a few people will get that, but that's enough for me.
I went on a school trip when I was like 8. I don't really remember it because what need do I have to go to a railway museum twice in my life?
Oh, I've been loads of times.
I'm not Reverend
Wilbur
Wilbur
Awdry.
Awdry, so
Yeah.
Slightly out of left field question, but it popped into my head while you were talking. How do we feel about the clergy getting married?
Oh, okay. I don't give a fuck,
Yeah.
actually. I thought
I
would
don't
have an
mind the
opinion
marriage part. It's the other bit.
there.
The clergy bit.
Very good, very good.
What that Willie do? I knew,
Oh, she said it.
I knew one of you would laugh at that, and I knew it wouldn't be Laura.
What's the matter, Charlie? He asked the driver. There's a traction engine in the scrapyard, Vicar. He'll be broken up next week. Jem Cole says he never drove a better engine. Do save him, sir. He saws wood and gives children rides. We'll see, replied the vicar. Jem Cole came on Saturday. The Reverend's coming to see you, Trevor. Maybe he'll buy you. Do you think he will? asked Trevor hopefully. He will when I've lit your fire and cleaned you up. The vicar and his 2 boys arrived that evening. Trevor hadn't felt so happy for months. He chuffered about the yard. Show your paces, Trevor, said the vicar. Later, he came out of the office smiling. I've got him cheap, Jem, cheap. Do you hear that, Trevor? Cried Jem. The Reverend saved you and you live at the vicarage now. Peep, peep, whistled Trevor.
So I'm going to read you something from the Thomas Wiki.
The Thomas Wiki logo
Yeah.
looks so much like the History Channel logo.
Does it?
Like the font and like the picture. I was like, why is this on the... Oh, no, it's not the History Channel.
So the Island of Sodor, its people, history and railways, that's out of print. So his son requested the publisher to reprint it. They said no. So he offered to buy... I know. So he offered to buy the copyright of the book, but this too has been refused to his own son. So a new book was written by Christopher Audrey. It was published in 2005 to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the Railway series. So it's essentially out of print.
And every year on the date of the accident, it runs again as a warning to others, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul. Percy, what are you talking about? The ghost train. Driver saw it last night. Where? Asked Thomas and Toby. He didn't say. Oh, it makes my wheels wobble to think of it. Huh, said Thomas. You're just a silly little engine. I'm not scared.
So how are we feeling about this subject up till now? I'm going to go into the history of the show in a minute.
I think generally not a particularly strong opinion. I've not have any. I'm just like, yeah, it's fine.
Oh, that's how I feel about marriage and the clergy. Literally have never cared less about anything in my life.
I don't know what I was expecting you to ask, but it truly wasn't something that boring.
I've been reading a book about medieval relationships, sex and love. That is potentially why that was floating around in my head, because they introduced the celibacy rule for the clergy in the Middle Ages.
What do you think of it?
I think it'd be better if they all got married.
It's not got an especially interesting background thus far. However, Elsie messaged me earlier and told me not to do too much Googling of Thomas the Tank Engine. So I'm hoping she's got some interesting stuff.
Well, your question, I thought you were asking how do we feel about the show, but you just mean like the general background.
Yeah, because what
Right.
shocked me is that, I mean, I shouldn't really have been shocked because people that like trains tend to really like trains. I was amazed at how much was based on his real incredible in-depth knowledge of the lines up and down the British Isles.
All kinds of ships use the harbour at the big station by the sea. There are passenger ships, cargo ships, and fishing boats also come here. They unload their fish on the quay. Some of it goes to shops in the town, and the rest in a special train to other places far away. This is the train the railwaymen call the Flying Kipper.
The thing that I'd like to say is I think he's a fucking nerd, but I really can't speak to someone spending hours of their time whittling away world building. I cannot judge
All
someone
right.
for doing that.
I'll do it.
Yeah, Meg do it.
Nerd.
I mean, I kind of respect it. I
mean, he's
Oh, I respect
monetized it effectively.
he's monetized
so-
his cringe.
He's
Yeah.
made his son into the same thing he's into, and isn't that what all fathers want at the
Yes,
end
it
of
is.
the
It's
day?
what all parents want. It's impressive that the train world has their own Jolkin, Rolkin, Tolkien.
Mm-hmm. A shame you can't do that with his name though.
Well, let's try.
Yeah. Reverend.
Rev, Wev.
Reverend Wevwind. It's actually really hard.
It's really difficult, yeah.
Well, Jolkin Rolkin Tolkien is lightning in a bottle.
Excuse me, Jolkin, Rolkin, Tolkien.
Sorry,
What did you say?
I only did the one Rolkin.
Yeah, Jolkin, Rolkin.
Yeah.
It sounds like someone falling down a hill.
Yeah.
Do you know, me and my dad have been laughing about this for years. And a few months ago, one of my colleagues sent the tweet to our work.
The original tweet.
Yeah, and I was like, me and my dad laugh about this all the time.
So before we go on to the topic of the TV show, Meg has a fun little drinky that we're all going to try, even though she's ill and she's going to have her mouth around it.
Well, we're going to have our mouths around it first.
What is it, Meg?
Winter spiced cranberry Sprite. It smells a bit like the fancy books fizz you get from M&S.
It does.
Laura's making a confused face. And some disgusting mouth noises as well.
There's a drink that super reminds me of, but
Oh, it actually does smell a bit like Bugsbit.
I cannot for the life of me place it. It's not one I've had here.
Oh, that's actually delicious.
It is really nice.
I really like that.
Ooh.
It's really good, isn't it?
It tastes a bit like kind of sherbety. It tastes
Yeah.
a bit like flying saucers.
Yes, I love flying saucers.
I will say it's second sip. It's already too sweet for me. I've become a full adult. The amount I say that these days,
it's too sweet for me.
it's too sweet for me, which is the off-quoted thing by my parents when I was a kid. And I'm like, what are you talking about? How can anything be too
Do you
sweet?
think that's kind of a side effect of growing up in Asia? Because a lot of Asian food and Asian desserts especially are not as sweet as we have them in the West.
Maybe.
No, especially like Chinese, Japanese desserts are not that sweet at all.
Oh, I was literally earlier looking at like where's the closest place we could get like red bean taiyaki, I think is
Yeah.
the fish shaped ones.
Yeah.
Which I get
I've
mixed
never
up with
had one.
which I get mixed up with takoyaki, which is
The octopus balls.
the octopus
Yeah.
balls, and it's like you don't want to be looking like, especially me, you don't want to be getting those two mixed up. But yeah.
Speaking of cranberries, I want to tell a story about a friend that I had throughout all of school and Meg had in sixth form. Luke, if you're listening, love you. You're the best.
I don't know
His-
you, sir.
So his social media handles, he barely uses social media at all. But when he did, his handle was Cranberry Robot. And we said, Luke, why is your name on all your socials Cranberry Robot? And he said, well, I went onto a username generator website and it's the first one that came up.
Cranberry Robot was so raw. The BBC computer game code.
Yes.
Did you ever play Raw?
No, I didn't. But I remember that the CBBC games had randomly generated names
And
for
it was
people.
always
It was always a colour
and then
an
noun or
animal.
something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
And Cranberry Robot is so
It
raw.
really is.
Yeah.
And I said to him, Luke, you know that you're allowed to choose your own. You don't have to, when you go onto the internet for the first time, you don't have to start by letting it choose your name. And I said, do you like cranberries? He said, yeah, I do actually.
My first one I think was Xbox, and because I am not original or creative, it was Dum Diddy Dum.
Dum diddy dum.
Dum Diddy Dum. And then first on was RuneScape, I was Dee Dee because of Dexter's sister in Dexter's Laboratory.
Oh, not Dexter's sister and
Dexter.
No.
Who I was talking to my boyfriend about this the other day because we're all back on Netflix. Dexter's sister in Dexter is called Deborah.
No.
And I know, like, so the whole Dexter's adopted. They're not like biological siblings, but I
Okay.
do think it's kind of evil to have one child called Dexter and one child called Deborah. Kind of like how it's evil to have one child called Elspeth and one child called Elizabeth.
Yes.
Well, I was supposed to also have like an S name because my family, when I was a kid, it was Sharon, Simon, Sean, and I'm the youngest. And I was,
yeah.
I think, supposed to be named like Shauna or Shannon or something. And then they were like, oh no, it's too close to Sharon. And I'm like, so
The
what you've
Kardashians
done,
of Berkshire.
what you've done is just leave me as the one out with a completely different.
Betty was almost, well, a name in the running for Betty was Martha, but they already had Arthur, so they vetoed that
So your
pretty quick.
options were Elspeth and Elizabeth or Arthur and Martha.
Yeah. So I once asked my parents if I was going to be a boy, what would I have been called? What else would you have called me? And they were like, oh, I can't remember.
I believe I would have been called Jack, but my parents
Jack Mumby's a good name.
my parents my mum likes to tell me names that she likes now, and like she's quite into like old-fashioned names have come back into fashion.
Mabel.
Mavis. She loves Mavis.
That's so cute.
It's horrible. We had a mouse called Mavis.
I think it's, I think it's really cute.
That's a
But I
really
don't
good
think it would
mouse
suit
name.
me.
I thought you had
She'd be
a-
like, oh, if you were born now, we'd call you Mavis. And I'm like, well, number one, if I was born now, Dad would veto that.
I thought you had a hedgehog called Mavis.
She was called Nala.
Oh, was she? Okay.
Yeah. I had a mouse
Aw.
called Mavis.
Aw.
But yeah, so sometimes I think about like me and my boyfriend have thrown around some slightly more out there names, and I think, is my mum gonna hate that? And then she comes back with shit like Mavis, and I'm like,
Just
yeah.
a bit of Meg's mum lore. That hedgehog was a impulse buy.
Yeah, she.
So it's like
Crazy.
every other pet.
I don't know if Dad has ever heard this story, so I'll tell it now.
Oh, okay.
I
Paul, you better be listening.
I came home from school, and my mum said to me, "Have you noticed anything different?" And I said, "No." And she went, "Try." And I went through into the hallway, and there was this like vivarium type thing that you'd keep like a lizard in,
Oh.
and
That wasn't there before.
that wasn't there before.
Fucking hell.
And I was like, what the fuck is that, Vicky? So I went through into the hallway, and there was this like cage vivarium type thing in there, and I was like, what have you done? Because she had this habit of like impulse buying animals.
I'm surprised you guys never had a chicken or something.
And I went, oh yeah, what the hell is that? And she was like, it's a hedgehog. And I was like, what? And she'd like, when like African pygmy hedgehogs, like when they went through that kind of,
Yeah.
they're like fashionable.
I must have missed that.
She talked about getting them, or like, she was like, oh, that'd be so cute to have, but they were really expensive.
Yeah.
And this was like at the time where people who had their African pygmy hedgehogs kind of didn't want them anymore. And she'd driven to Brand's home to pick up this hedgehog and cage for like 60 quid.
That's a long drive from your house.
Yeah, for a hedgehog. I mean, yeah, but
How
I guess
old were you?
Oh, I was like 14,
Okay.
15, and brought it home, and I was like, oh, what's it called? And and she was like, oh, it's called Nala. I was like, oh, great, it's my pet now, though, isn't it? Because she used to go buy animals, and then they were mine, and I was like, I never asked for this. And I said, what did Dad say when you told him? And she went, I haven't yet.
He'll find out when he gets
Yeah,
home.
and I was like,
He'll find out in 15 years when you've got your own podcast.
I said, please God, let me be there when you tell him. What, like when we had the mouse, when we had Mavis, she'd gone to the pet shop to get some like rabbit food or something, and they were like selling mice in cages for like £15. You got like the mouse and the cage. And otherwise, that mouse is being frozen and sold as snake food. And she hates snakes, so she came home with this mouse.
I'm taking
Oh my
snake
God.
food away from them.
We hid this mouse from my dad for about a month before he found out about it.
My
Wow. Sorry, just on mice, one of my favourite lines of dialogue in any TV show ever is in Arrested Development when Michael Cera says, say what you like about America, but $10 still buys you a hell of a lot of mice.
Yeah.
okay.
There's only so long you can hide an animal from
Yes.
someone that is so
Allergic.
smelly.
Oh, smelly.
They are they piss a lot and they stink, and you can't discreetly clean a mouse out because you can't put it in like a hamster ball or anything. You've got to put the whole cage in a bath. If you don't have a bath, you can't have a mouse, and you've got to.
It's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, because you just need to put the mouse in the bath because there's nowhere else to put them.
Why can't you put them in a hamster ball?
Because they're not strong enough to move a hamster ball.
You're just
Yes, they
you're
just
just
have to stay there
caging
then.
it like
No,
a
but, like,
Pokemon.
if you try to get that mouse out and it's not in something really big to catch that mouse is
Gone.
That mouse is gone.
Right, okay.
It's not as simple as reach in, grab mouse. It's not.
Right, okay.
Where have you been, lazy bones? Asked Thomas. Oh dear, my system is out of order. No one understands my case. You don't know what I suffer, moaned Henry. Rubbish, said Thomas.
The journey from page to screen was quite a long one, so don't laugh. I'm doing a thing.
Shut up, said James. It's not funny.
So in 1953, the BBC wanted to adapt the books. The story they chose to adapt is the famous one where Henry gets bricked up in a tunnel for, stepping out of line. It's called The Sad Story of Henry, and that is the one the BBC wanted to adapt. Audrey was not crazy about that. He had some issues with it, but he eventually relented. So this special was live. It was a live broadcast using models, and it went disastrously.
Yeah, that's fucking risky.
So all the trains kept derailing, and people had to go in with their hands to put them right. And there's no existing footage of this. There's just newspaper reports and reviews about how disastrous it was. So that, that doesn't exist anymore. Then in 1973, so 20 years later, Andrew Lloyd Webber wanted to make an animated musical series of
Fuck's
it.
sake.
I know. I can only imagine that like Starlight Express was his like consolation prize.
Yeah.
So
What's that?
it's one of his musicals. He wanted full control of the franchise, but he basically claimed that if he did, it would make it more attractive to Americans to invest in it. And Audrey famously said, once the Americans get their hands on it, it will be vulgarized and ruined.
Wow,
That's what he said
opinions
about-
have not changed about American media by the British, have
There
they?
is a lot that's been done to Thomas the Tank Engine that Audrey would not like.
He'd hate some of
the
it.
movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad with, who was it?
Alec
Ali
Baldwin.
Baldwin, Mara Wilson. I've seen the trailer for that. He probably would not like it, and actually critics didn't like it. It was panned. Yes. So he did get this animated series. Granada made the pilot. The backers backed out at the last minute, and in the end it just wasn't made, but you can see the original drawings. They are less creepy than what we got. They're still pretty creepy, but
Was this puppets as well, or was
no, this was animated.
animation? Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you know this, but Andrew Lloyd Webber has a production company called the Really Useful Group, and
I did not.
Yeah, all of his like film versions of his musicals are by the Really Useful Group. And
Wait, did he make Cats?
He made Cats.
He made Cats. The movie.
No, not the not
Okay.
the.
Because you said all the movie adaptations. So was he involved?
Well,
in
let's not
Okay.
split hairs.
Okay.
So
Just curious.
in the show, in the books, the trains are always talking about how they want to be really useful engines. They're always being praised for being really useful engines, and that's where a Really Useful Group comes
Right.
from. So that kind of blew my mind. That's where Really Useful Group comes from. Stop laughing.
The Fat Controller works his engines hard. But they are very proud when he calls them really useful. I'm going to the scrapyard today, Edward called to Thomas. What? Already? You're not that old, replied Thomas cheekily. Thomas was only teasing.
So Britt Allcroft was a director and producer, and in 1979, so only 6 years after Andrew Lloyd Webber failed to make his series, she and her husband decided that they wanted to make their own series. So she was making a documentary about British Rail in 1979, and she met Audrey through that. Her and her husband took 4 years and remortgaging their house to create 26 episodes.
And that-
Jesus Christ, how
They had a lot of faith in it.
much did it cost to make, or how little did their house?
I wonder.
It looks cheap, right? Actually, it doesn't. It looks, they paid Ringo Starr to be in it,
That's why.
Yeah.
You hadn't needed a starlet to get people to watch.
Starlets. Oh.
Sorry.
I wonder if that was at all common in like 1979, or if they told their friends, "Oh, we're remortgaging their house," and that absolutely floored everyone they told, because I don't know, remortgaging is even kind of rare now. So
Yeah,
I
I
actually
don't
know quite a lot of people who've remortgaged.
never mind. I just don't know
Or
many.
borrowed money against, because it's the asset,
Yeah.
the most common asset people have.
So they founded Britt Allcroft Productions, the two of them, The director was David Mitten. So most of his
Aw,
credits,
Mitten.
David Mitten. And most of his credits are for special effects engineer. So he was behind the Thunderbirds.
Okay.
He worked...
Yeah, I can actually see that a little bit.
he's behind a lot of creepy looking
Yeah.
things that needed special effects technicians and
Yeah.
like practical effects. So yeah, he was responsible for the look of what?
So, special effects. Someone to light tiny fires.
It takes skill to keep a fire tiny.
It does take skill to keep it tiny.
So there were 7 seasons between 1984 and 2003, and there's only about 2 episodes that David Mitten didn't direct. So the way that he moved their faces is that it was linked to a motor that was mounted behind the faces.
Oh, I fully thought that they just had different circles they stuck on.
Oh yeah, they did.
They
I'm just
did,
talking
it's
about
the
the eyes.
eyes.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Sorry,
Yeah,
yes,
that
I should
makes
have
more
explained
sense.
that. So Ringo was the star pull. In the US, it was actually George Carlin.
Yeah, I accidentally
Yeah.
watched one of them and I was like, "What? Huh?"
It's a bit unnerving, isn't it?
I was expecting a northern accent. Huh?
Who are you?
Like your smoke box, Percy, laughed James. But Gordon was still grumpy. One day I'll show you just what a big engine can really do. So what can a big engine really do? Not speak to silly little green engines for a start, replied Gordon. Engines don't swim, Henry. You were meant to deliver fish, not swim with them. You should know that by now. Yes, sir. I'm sorry, sir. When Henry arrived at the docks, Cranky the Crane looked down on him. My, Henry, I expect you'll have some fishy tales to tell. But take my advice, have a long hose down first. But there was worse to come. Look, they've caught all this fish and a green whale, too.
And it's funny to me that George Carlin was the US one, because we're going to talk about this in a minute. He's quite a left-leaning comedian.
Is Ringo Starr not?
Well, he's not
Not
a
a
comedian.
comedian.
Okay, left leaning.
I
or
don't
a
know.
drummer. Ah. Thanks.
I actually don't know. But Thomas and the Isle of Sodor, it's a very authoritarian show. Don't know if you picked up on those
It's a
vibes.
very industrious island.
Yes.
I've definitely picked up on the sheer quantity of industry happening on the island.
Well, the docks.
No, there's more.
They're always shunting.
Yeah, shunting.
There's
always
There's
shunting.
one episode where fuck me if I remember which one. One of the trains is going around. He's really busy that day, and he's going to the coal mine. He's going to the metalworks. He's going to the fuel depot. He's going to the flour mill, and he goes to the docks. And I was like, Jesus Christ! Low unemployment on this island.
You know how it goes on and on about how Percy is the one that goes to the docks. There was one episode that at the end, Thomas said Percy's like, Thomas takes him fish or something, and Percy's complaining about the smell, and it's like, why are you complaining about the smell? This is what you do. This is what you do. This is how you smell, Percy.
Why do you guys have sensory systems?
Nose.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's...
why
They do have noses, to be
Why
fair.
do they have senses?
They have more nose than the humans do.
Well, they're
They have-
sentient, Laura.
Yeah. Why?
Well, there would be no story without...
No, I know, but like it's a question I have. It's the same. It brings up the same questions as Pixar's
Oh, well,
Cars.
because when Audrey was young, he would sleep and he would hear trains outside.
Right,
and
yes.
He imagined them with
Right.
little personalities.
Hallucinations.
So, yes.
Hello, duck. Going fishing? I'd take care if I were you. Why? Huffed Duck. Well, for one thing, puffed Thomas, remembering his own experience, if fish get into an engine's boiler, they always cause trouble.
I think it's so funny that the trains have a bigger range of emotion than the humans.
Yeah.
There was one where, like, Ringo Starr, I feel weird saying the narrator. The narrator goes, and the people laughed, and it pans to the people, and the people do nothing. They can't even move their eyes. Nothing about their
They're
faces
so
move.
uncanny.
I do think the inclusion of humans makes this even more of a question than Pixar's Cars. There's no people in Cars. but there's fucking people sharing this island with these sentient fucking trains.
Well, when you see the people up against the faces of the trains, that's even scarier because it's like, oh my God, if you were that person, right, and those sentient trains existed and they were that huge, we would revere them as gods.
This is the thing, like, were they created by an engineer? Did a person make them? Or did they come to this island and they found sentient trains?
Well, people repair them.
That's another thing I had. One of the episodes, this is like a modern day episode. They're in like the scrapyard and there's bits and pieces of trains all around. Did they view that in the same way that we would if you went to a hospital
And there were bits
and there were legs and there were arms and legs and organs about, like there's bits of trains around you.
It's just unsanitary, Laura.
Well, it's just these things pose questions for me watching it.
Yeah, that's true. Like, they are much bigger
Yeah.
than the people, and they are sentient, so it's kind of like slavery.
Well, there's a really great New Yorker article. People really hated this, actually, because a lot of them were like, why are you thinking this deeply about a kids' TV show? Like, it's really not that deep. Like, why can't you just let it be? But 'cause
Listen,
it was quite
it's-
political as
yeah.
well. But she says up at the top of the article, if you think I'm exaggerating, you don't remember Thomas well enough. So I'm going to read from this article because it's a very good piece of writing, actually. It's clear from his work that Audrey disliked change, venerated order, and craved the administration of punishment. Henry wasn't the only train to receive a death sentence. So they're laughing because... Why are you laughing?
I'm now laughing.
Henry wasn't the only train to receive a death sentence.
I'm now laughing that the Reverend is pro capital punishment.
We don't know. We don't know either way. But in
Is
one
this the time to
episode,
talk about death of the author?
a manager tells a show-off engine named Smudger that he's going to, quote, make him useful at last, and then turn Smudger into a generator, never to move again.
Until one day, manager said he was going to make him useful at last. Smudger stopped laughing then. Why? What did he do? He turned him into a generator. He's still there behind our shed. He'll never move again.
Brackets, there are several R.I.P. Smudger tribute videos on YouTube, close brackets. In another episode, a double-decker bus named Bulgy comes to the station and talks about the revolution. Free the roads from railway tyranny, he cries. He is quickly labelled a scarlet deceiver, trapped under a bridge, and turned into a hen house.
Oh my
wait,
god, it's
what?
right wing.
Of course it is. Did you watch it?
Look, shrilled Oliver. Look at Bulgy. He's a mean scarlet deceiver. Duck made good time and all the passengers caught their trains. The bridge is now mended, but not, unfortunately, Bulgy and his ways. He never learned sense. He's a hen house now.
No,
None of this
I didn't
filtered
see a political
through.
message. I just saw weird trains with weird faces out.
Yeah, that kind of distracts you from a lot.
What this says to me is that there's living metal on this island, and anything they make out of it is then alive, and then they're subjecting it to their right-wing way of life.
Yeah, because ultimately this is a show about keeping workers in line, quite literally.
Yeah.
Because the story of every single episode, I mean, you watched a few of the more modern ones, so
I watched
don't know.
mostly classic, some middling, and then some very new ones.
So all of the classic ones are about a train that deviates from what they're supposed to do and gets horrendously punished. Did you not notice that?
This show
Yeah.
is conformity.
So there's one where basically Gordon's showing off about something. He breaks down on the track, he falls into a ditch, and that's, he's sad about it.
yeah.
And that's it. That's
And
it.
Yeah.
the humans have to rescue them.
And the humans come over and, like, there's some little boys that are really mean to him, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and the fat controller, Sir Topham Hatt, he's
Yeah.
called, he actually looks at this train that is half in the water, and he's only got like 7-ish trains to play with, by the way, and he says, oh, deal with that later, just leave him there. Like, what the fuck?
Not a hope, said his driver and fireman. You're stuck, you silly great engine. Don't you understand that? They telephoned the Fat Controller. So Gordon didn't want to take the special train and ran into a ditch. What's that you say? The special's waiting. Tell Edward to take it, please. And Gordon? Oh, leave him where he is. We haven't time to bother with him now.
I need to point out that every time Ringo Starr says Fat Controller, he says Fat Controller.
Does he?
Yeah, like he's angry about a fat man.
Fancy a really useful blue engine like Thomas becoming a disgrace to the Fat Controller's railway.
I'd also say, like, the modern ones, they do not refer to him as anything other than Sir Top and Hat.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course they don't call him Fat Controller anymore.
The Fat Controller.
Yeah, but have you seen him?
I think, yeah, he looks more like the Monopoly Man in the modern ones as well. It's just...
They say in this article also that it looks like he spent time in colonial India and has witnessed murder.
James had not seen the Fat Controller for several days. He was left alone for being naughty and was not even allowed out to push coaches and trucks in the yard. Oh dear, he thought, I shall have to stay in the shed for always, and no one will see my red coat again. All because I went so fast I made a hole in one of my coaches that had to be mended with, of all things, a passenger's bootlace. At last the Fat Controller arrived. I see you are sorry, James, he said. I hope now that you will be a better engine. You have given me a lot of trouble. People are laughing at my railway, and I don't like that at all. I'm very sorry, sir, said James. I will try hard to behave. That's a good engine, said the Fat Controller.
On Sodor, the steam trains engage in constant competition for big jobs, more work, and the Fat Controller's approval. Anthropomorphized trains in literature tend to be hard workers, but one Tumblr thread holds that Thomas and friends have other motivations. The show, quote, canonically takes place in a train post-apocalypse where the Island of Sodor is the only safe zone in a totalitarian dystopia in which steam trains are routinely killed and their body parts are sold or cannibalized for repair.
The scrapyard is full of rusty old cars and machinery. They are broken into pieces, loaded into trucks, and Edward pulls them to the steelworks where they are melted down and used again. I'm Trevor. They're going to break me up next week. What a shame, said Edward. My driver says I only need some paint, polish and oil to be as good as new. But my master says I'm old-fashioned. Edward snorted. People say I'm old-fashioned, but I don't care. The Fat Controller says I'm a useful engine.
That's Cars.
You
Cars
really
is in a
are.
post-apocalyptic, post-human world.
Yeah, you're really putting it in a different perspective from what I watched it from. I'm quite poorly, so I didn't really look any deeper than, oh, a train.
No,
Oh,
that's
another
fair.
train.
Thomas likes whistling rudely at him. Wake up, lazy bones. Why don't you work hard like me? He was just going to sleep when Thomas came up in his cheeky way. Wake up, lazy bones. Do some hard work for a change.
The thing that gets me is that they're constantly breaking down. Like, it's a really dysfunctional...
It's actually quite representative of the current modern
in it,
rail
but the way
service.
that they're so... The Fat Controller is so unwilling to immediately solve the problems because he enjoys seeing the trains punished, because it's always for some sort of slight. So, like, vanity or... gluttony, probably not, but
Treachery.
treachery, exactly. Like, they're always competing for more jobs and like showing off about how useful they are, and then that is always their, what's the Greek term? Hamartia. That's their
Hamartia.
downfall. They fly too close to the sun, their brakes break or something, they end up...
Also, sometimes it's really not their fault. It just seems like if the people who worked there had better lines of communication,
Oh,
they
literally,
wouldn't.
yeah. Sometimes it's just a fault in the way
Yeah.
they work.
Yeah, it's like, it's not even the train's fault. It's the fucking people who run the trains.
So it's kind of like a shit morality tale. But for this reason, I like it.
What has happened to me? Asked Gordon. I feel so weak. You've burst your safety valve, said the driver. You can't pull the train anymore. Oh dear, said Gordon. We were going so nicely too. And look, there's Henry laughing at me. Everyone came to see Gordon. Huh, said the Fat Controller. I never liked these big engines. Always going wrong. Send for another engine at once.
Because you can read really deeply into it, or not, because we didn't, me and Meg.
I mean, I think it's...
But you can,
It's kind
which
of
is
a
good.
perfect horror. Because you always feel like there's something darker that's being hidden from you,
That is
right?
yeah,
true.
true.
That is true. It had really strange vibes, which is probably why we didn't like the Americanized one that much, because they got the vibe wrong, and I wanted the jank vibes.
It's
Do you
like
know
the
what I mean?
old-timey 1920s, like, hot fuzzness of it, where there's something going on, but you're never going to be told what's going on. It's just like a veneer of nostalgia
Yeah.
and niceness, and then sometimes a train gets bricked up for eternity. Because what the Fat Controller has done there is that he's sacrificed an entire tunnel.
He sacrificed an entire tunnel, an entire train, and that is a sentient train that is going to be encaged forever.
Just to punish the train, he has made this island run worse.
We shall take away your rails, he said, and leave you here for always and always and always. They took up the old rails and built a wall in front of him so that Henry couldn't get out of the tunnel anymore. All he could do was watch the trains rushing through the other tunnel. He was very sad because he thought no one would ever see his lovely green paint with red stripes again. As time went on, Edward and Gordon would often pass by. Edward would say, "Peep, peep, hello." And Gordon would say, "Poop, poop, poop, serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out. Sudden dirt from the tunnel had spoilt his lovely green paint and red stripes anyway. He wondered if he would ever be allowed to pull trains again. But I think he deserved his punishment. Don't you?
Do you want to know why he was bricked up?
Yeah.
He just had a nice new coat of paint, and it was raining, and he didn't want to get his coat wet.
His
so
green coat, his green paint, and nice red
stripes, yeah.
Once, an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. It went into a tunnel and squeaked through its funnel and wouldn't come out again.
So he stayed in the tunnel. They couldn't push him out. So in the end, they were like, fuck it, fuck you. We'll brick
Bricked
you
him
in.
in.
And they leave his face so he can just see what's going through. And this, now I thought this was a standalone story, but no, I watched the next episode and the trains are going past him and saying hello to him as they go past. I was like, oh, it's part of the wider story.
This is canon, guys.
Yeah.
In a minute, Gordon would see the tunnel where Henry stood bricked up and lonely. Oh dear, thought Henry, why did I worry about rain spoiling my lovely coat of paint? Will the Fat Controller ever forgive me and let me out again? I'm going to poop at Henry, said Gordon.
I think a couple of episodes later, they de-brick him and let him out.
Because cruelty.
They do, but like, I would have preferred it if he just left it as one thing. Like, oh yeah, he's dying in
Yeah.
there.
Why not let Henry try? Yes, said the Fat Controller, I will. Will you help pull this train, Henry? He asked. Oh, yes, said Henry. When Henry had got up steam, he puffed out. He was dirty and covered with cobwebs. Oh, I am stiff, he groaned. Have a run to ease your joints and find a turntable, said the Fat Controller.
I think this weirdly tell me if I'm wrong here. I think that British people have this, maybe other Europeans also have this like weird close relationship with trains. Like we view them very romantically and very like,
Yeah,
we all
I would agree
really
with
seem
that.
to care about trains. Not in like a we're upset, but like we
Not
all have
Percy though. Fuck him.
we have like strong opinions about trains. People talk about trains a lot. This didn't exist in Singapore like at all. Like no one fucking talked about the trains
Yeah, it's
ever.
quite the steam era is like it's a whole historical time, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
the time of steam, like it changed everything.
Yeah.
And it's like there's loads of paintings of trains. Like Terence Cuneo has some like just gorgeous paintings of trains.
I
And
mean, Singapore is older than is younger than these trains.
Singapore
so-
is younger than the train tracks that you go home on.
there's so much literature set on trains and films,
so
classic
much
films,
British literature on trains. Yeah. So yeah, Singapore born quote unquote got its independence from the British in 1965. So it's younger than Thomas.
So Britt Allcroft. So she produced a show in the US called Shining Time Station.
So, this is quite a place, isn't it? Yes, but it's different than I thought it'd be. Oh, I bet I know what you want to ask me. Do trains ever stop here? Well, some do. Steam engines, diesel engines. Fire engines? Oh, Matt, come here. This is my plan. I'm gonna make this old station as good as it ever was. There'll be passengers rushing around, going to faraway places. It's gonna be a very busy station, just like the days when my old granny used to run it. And then lots of trains will want to stop here. Will you help me? Sure. Great. Now listen, there is a railroad engineer coming here this afternoon, and if he likes this place, then maybe he'll stay and help too. So, where should we begin?
Which is how most Americans know what Thomas the Tank Engine is, because it was a live action show set in a station. Ringo Starr was in it. He played a tiny little man called Mr. Conductor, and he lived in the
Shoebox.
no, I mean he was that small, but what's it called, the Signal House? He lived in that.
Yeah.
And in the middle of these episodes were segments from Thomas the Tank Engine. But it was a live action show, but that is how most Americans know.
And you may call me Mr. Conductor. Well, you're a good worker. You know who'd like you? My friend Thomas.
Is Thomas living there with you?
Dear me, no. Thomas is a steam engine, and he lives on the island of Sodor. You are interested in trains, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Splendid. Then I'll tell you a story about my friend Thomas. You do like stories, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Very well, but first I have to find my whistle. Just so. Ah, here we go. Thomas is a tank engine who lives at a big station on the island of Sodor. He's a cheeky little engine.
And Britt Allcroft also produced Thomas the Magic Railroad, which was the 2002 film with Mara Wilson that had horrible reviews.
Mara Wilson's Matilda, right?
Yeah. The poor box office performance of the film caused Allcroft to resign as deputy chairman of her company in September 2000. She has not been... the film was 2000. She has not been active in the industry since then.
Wow.
And I wrote underneath that, can't a girl just do the best she can?
Yeah.
Like, she
Shunned
brought the
because of
world
a
Thomas.
train.
Yeah.
Wow.
Alec Baldwin,
Find more gold dust.
Peter Fonda,
This is your shining time to...
Mara Wilson,
You're a really useful engine, Thomas.
and Thomas.
Now that's what I call a perfect landing.
Thomas and the Magic Railroad. This summer, share the wonder with your family.
I'll save a seat for you.
I wonder if Thomas hits different in the US because they have such a different way back they had
It's different.
They had a similar relationship with trains, and then really didn't, I think.
Wasn't Isambard Kingdom Brunel American?
I don't know what that is.
Was he American?
No, he was.
Who was the American train?
He was European.
One of the really rich ones, like Carnegie or some shit. It wasn't Carnegie.
No, the
but...
guy that first came up with the idea for steam trains was from Newcastle, I think.
Let me look up Train Baron America.
Yeah, no, sorry, isn't Buckingham Brunel is British. Of course he is. But there was definitely
he was. I think he was French and British.
No, he
something.
wasn't. He
Okay.
was born in Portsmouth.
Oh right, okay. But was his dad not French?
Oh, he went to school in France or something like that, I think.
Vanderbilt is the
Yeah,
US one.
that's the one, yeah.
He merged a bunch of rail
The
companies
bridge,
altogether.
rail, train guys.
Yeah. And was like one of the
Thanks, horrible
richest,
histories.
one of the richest men ever kind of people. You know, the Vanderbilts of New York society.
I feel like we should talk about the Beeching report, but I don't know enough to talk about it.
I don't know anything. What?
Lord Beeching in the 60s closed a lot of... Yeah, you
I
do know what it
about
is,
him.
yeah.
I watched a documentary with one of Julie Walters, one of the trio from Mamma Mia.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she did a documentary where went on there's a bunch of steam trains that still go around the Welsh coast, and she went on a bunch of them and then was talking about all the railways he closed and how it affected like small town business.
Oh, it was
and
massive.
there was the map of what was closed is insane. Like, it's ridiculous how much was closed, and it really...
Well, I'm glad that you know more about it than me. I just brought it up thinking that we should acknowledge it.
There's one pet cemetery in the UK.
I don't want to be buried in a pet cemetery. No one likes the Ramones. Okay, go on.
That used to be, like, was on one of the rail lines that was closed, and it was featured in the documentary, but I really can't remember why. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. We should talk about the gender politics of Thomas. So, I tried to get my hands on a chapter of a book by what's she called, Laura?
Shauna
Wilton. So it's a 2009 book. It's the chapter in it that I think that she's most well known for is called.
It's a collection of she only wrote that chapter.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. And what was it called? Thomas and Friends, the gender politics.
No, it was the Really Useful Engine.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Really Useful Engines. So the only women characters in the classic series are carriages that get pulled along by the mail trains.
Don't forget the wife.
Oh, the wife of the Fat Controller. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I did forget about her, to be honest.
Don't forget about the wife.
Sorry, yes, I completely forgot about the wife. So Thomas's own carriages are called Annie and Clarabelle.
Annie and Clarabelle could hardly believe their ears. He's dreadfully rude. I feel quite ashamed. He's dreadfully rude. And to Thomas they said, "You mustn't be rude. You make us ashamed." But Thomas didn't care a bit. That was funny. He chuckled. He felt very pleased with himself. Annie and Clarabelle were deeply shocked. They had great respect for Gordon, the big engine.
And sometimes to be honest, they get passed around the other mail trains.
The way you explained this the other day, just list off all the features of those existing that really just makes it worse and worse.
It's so bad. So they get passed around the mail trains as and when they're needed, and they have comments like, "Oh, he's got ever such a nice manner. Like, he's pulling you along a track." You rarely see
you got pulled.
You often don't see their faces. Like, to see their faces, they've got to be like uncoupled from the main tank engine. The reason that Thomas has them is because they were awarded to him for being a really useful engine. So that's fun, isn't it?
If you're useful, you get 2 wives.
You get a polycule of
carriages.
I was watching some of the classic ones, and then because I was like, oh yeah, there are no women trains so far, like, and then one train they were like, and Stephanie went and blah blah blah, and then I was like, oh, finally the first woman, and then the narrator went he, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Great. So you've got Thomas, you've got Percy, you've got Gordon, who's a cunt.
Gordon was cross. Why should Henry have a new shape, he grumbled. A shape good enough for me is good enough for him. He goes gallivanting off to Crewe, leaving us to do his work, and comes back saying how happy he feels. It's disgraceful. And there's another thing. Henry whistles too much. No respectable engine ever whistles loudly at stations. It isn't wrong, but we just don't do it.
You've got...
Gordon's a cunt name, though, to be fair.
Yeah, in it. There's Henry, there's...
Don.
No, it's not Don. Where did you get Don from?
I will explain in a minute if you'd like.
Explain now. I'm trying to remember the other ones.
In Bullet Train, the characteristics of the Thomas and Friends characters come up in as like a central plot line in that movie, because one of the characters in the movie, Lemon, uses the Thomas Friends characters to denote different kinds of people.
Nice. I really want to see it, actually.
And the only ones he describes are Gordon, Edward, Henry, Diesel, Percy, Thomas, and Don is mentioned.
Okay.
And he says
maybe that's a later addition.
Yeah, he says Gordon is strongest, most important, and doesn't always listen.
Yes.
Edward is wise and kind.
Okay.
Henry, hardworking and strong. Percy, young, sweet, and not all there. And Diesel's fucking trouble.
Yeah, he is. Yeah. I think that was because Audrey was kind of
anti-diesel,
yeah.
Duck was waiting for his next journey. Near him stood a red bus, but he didn't look friendly like Bertie. The bus growled as he gazed at the happy passengers.
Stupid nonsense, he grumbled. I wouldn't have brought them if I'd known. I'd have had a breakdown or something.
I'm glad you didn't, smiled Duck. You'd have spoiled their fun.
Ah, enjoyment is all you engines live for. One day railways will be ripped up.
Duck felt shocked at such an idea. We have a friend called Bertie, and he's a bus, but he likes the railway. Sometimes he teases us about it, but he'd never want to see it ripped up.
Huh, growled the bus. I know Bertie. He's too small in size to be of any use.
Yeah, Diesels are shit stirrers, and they're trying for like the whole movie to suss out who the Diesel on the train is.
What I will say about Thomas and Friends is, I mean, this is in praise of Thomas and Friends. If you take out the horrible faces and the people and just have like normal train models in the set, it looks gorgeous. It really looks like someone has put a camera in a really well-made model railway. The lighting, it looks like they've lit it like real daylight.
Yeah, I like that.
It's really impressive. And the real steam that's going, they've done a great job making it look really good.
I think they did a really good job of capturing sort of British countryside-ness.
Except all that industry.
Well,
every industry.
Every fucking...
Every industry, and yet we don't see the grossness of any of those industries. It's just like, oh, look, how nice. Mines aren't gross at all. How nice. Look at the countryside. Forget about the mines. Forget we ever said
lovely slaughterhouse.
The soot from all the trains alone.
Yeah. Oh, sometimes their faces get covered in soot.
Oh, yeah.
Their faces are, I mean, we've said this already, but they're horrible. Like,
pasty.
Their expressions are, like, when the trains are looking sad, they're looking, like, manically sad. Like, drama mask sad.
Yeah. Yes.
They're quite scary.
Yeah. They do look like
the drama masks,
Ugh.
Just awful. Gordon especially just has this face I want to hit, like, but I'm scared of him, so I won't.
That would hurt.
James, Lassie, Mia, and Gordon, Rebecca, and Emily, and Thomas #1.
Let's go, go, go on a big world adventure. Let's go, 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 explore with Thomas and his friends. Let's go, go, go and meet new friendly faces. The world's just a train ride.
Thomas and Friends, big world, big adventures.
Meg watched the CGI newer ones, and then I watched the 2D animation newer ones. And I watched the first season that they did CGI, which was season 13, which was, I think, out when we were kids. I did not enjoy the 2D animation current ones. Firstly, the reason I said is the classic episodes are like 5 minutes long, right? The episodes for the modern ones, the 2D animation modern ones, are half an hour.
No, I can't.
No,
please.
Yeah.
When I saw they were 5 minutes, I was like, oh, thank God.
And then I was like, I'm sorry, half an hour, okay. And my main comment for the new ones is they're really, really generic.
Yeah, you can't really make any bad claims about them. They're like a normal amount of educational that a lot of parents are going to want their kids to be watching. They're not entertaining if you're over the age of about 5. They're not even that stimulating, really. They've got some very, very boring songs.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is the CGI one or the
Both.
2D? Oh, both. Okay.
Yeah.
They're both half hours.
No, I don't know how long.
CGI's shorter, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's also, like, one of the things I kind of liked the limitation of the classic one, because they're models. They can't hop between the rails without it looking really strange if they did that. Whereas the 2D animation ones, they walk off the rails. They move around. They switch. And I'm like, please,
don't like that.
Please don't do that. This isn't a comment against it, but they also have, like, a bunch of trains representative of different human races.
Okay.
So there's a Japanese train called Hero, who is voiced by a Japanese voice actor. And then there's...
Is it really, really fast?
No, there is a bullet train though, but I didn't see them speak much, so I don't know their name either. And then they've got one train that I think is supposed to be representative of like an African background.
Okay.
Because they've got like vague African patterning on the train. I think it's again voiced by a black voice actor, but I can't speak beyond that, you know. And it was just like, okay, I mean, I get it, but it's also interesting to impart races onto trains.
It is a bit. You can just eliminate it.
Yeah, you could just eliminate it entirely.
I understand wanting to
multiculturalize.
Yeah, so kids see themselves reflected in media,
Trains.
but at the same time,
trains.
They're trains.
So, why?
Like did you see that we had a comment that I deleted actually on sorry.
Yeah, if you follow us on Instagram and you tweet racism, not tweet. If you follow us on Instagram and you comment racism, we'll delete it.
Yeah. It was on one of the Tweenies reels, and someone had said that like they see Milo as black, which is not an uncommon opinion at all.
Oh, we spoke about that in our episode.
Yeah, and Fizz, I think, as mixed race, and you know it started some discussion. Nothing was that bad, and then someone commented like, oh, I hate to break it to you, but they're all white. And I was gonna like sarcastically reply with like, actually Milo is purple and Fizz is yellow, and you can interpret these characters however you want. But clearly this person did this with a lot of reels because they had the reply feature turned off, so I couldn't actually tag them in a comment, so I just deleted the comment. I was like, it's actually not worth my time at all. But that's the beauty of things like this, is that you can actually interpret them however you want to interpret them, because they aren't.
You can even suggest that they're all female. No one can actually tell you no.
It's a train.
It's a train, mate. It's a train.
It's a train.
You don't see a blue train and go, oh, well, that train's a boy.
Come on, blue train is so boy-coded. Let's be honest.
And hauling freight, yellow and green, red, orange and blue. They're the really useful crew, all with different roles to play. Round Tidmouth sheds all far away, down the hills and round the bends. Thomas and his friends. Thomas!
He's a cheeky one.
Rebecca!
She's new and lots of fun.
Percy!
Pulls the mail on time.
Gordon!
Thunders down the line.
Emily!
Really knows her stuff.
James!
Is always showing off.
Nia!
Wants to help and share.
Toby! Well, let's say he's square!
So I messaged my mum this morning. I said, we're recording Thomas. Do you have any insights, any memories from when I watched it? And she said, it's boring as fuck. I hated it. And I can see why she did. If I was watching that non-stop.
Yeah.
I think it was just because I liked the theme tune. That was my favourite thing about it.
It's everyone's favourite thing
it's
about it.
great. The way that it uses like whistles and like the noise of the steam in like as the instruments is so cool.
It really had a moment. Oh god, I don't even know when the moment, like the memed that.
Come on, motherfuckers, come
not that
on.
one. You know, the one that was like it was played so loud it broke the speaker.
Yeah,
noise.
yeah. The Harry and Ron in the car one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So funny.
Yeah.
You hear that? We must be getting close. Hold on.
Just briefly more on the new ones. It's also they've aged Thomas down and got rid of all the humans in the 2D animation one, which I actually think hurts it. I like the interactions between the train drivers and the trains. I like that bit.
I do as well, because it's just it suggests such a horrible working environment.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something about there being humans there as well that is
I like
just
it.
horrible.
I like it.
I like it too.
But like, so there's no the only human is the fat controller. Thomas isn't the focus of most of the episodes I saw. He wasn't even the focus. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh yeah, in the classic one as well.
Oh, true, actually. And then so there's one episode I watched, that there's really clear messages that they're trying to drive home in each of the episodes, which again, if it's for 5-year-olds, that makes sense. You can beat me over the head with it. I'm 5. But it's
Interesting. What are you beating 5-year-olds over the head with?
messages.
Politics.
Take home.
Merchandise.
Yeah, fucking that's why there's so many of them, and
Yeah,
there's
I know.
merchandise. And it was like
Audrey would have hated it.
yeah.
Capitalist that he was.
The take home was like it's an argument between two trains about function versus fun. And one of the trains is they're trying to do art, right? And she's like really creative and creates bullshit.
How the fuck? Go on. I don't even need to
It's
make
a
that
pile
point.
of
I don't.
stuff.
Yeah, I don't need to make that point. Just go on.
It's genuinely, she just makes a pile of stuff and calls it art. She's like,
That is what a lot of art.
Yeah. She's like, I'm creative, and then invites this train. I've never seen this kind of train vehicle, but I'm sure they exist. It had like a crane hook thing on a train carriage, right?
okay.
I've seen that at the docks, not on a train. But yeah, so she's very function, and then this little other kind of train is
all that time Laura spends at the dock.
was
I've seen it at the dock.
Waiting for the sailors to roll in.
so you know how prominent the docks are in Singapore.
I've seen it at the docks. I always love to spend time at those docks.
It really does.
Singapore's a shipping country.
So Hull.
Yeah, true.
And I
actually.
don't spend that much time at the docks. You fucking love it.
You eat that shit up, mate. Nom 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 nom. Docks.
But yeah, no, so the little fun person at the train and then the function train, they're like arguing, because then she goes, oh, why don't you try and be creative, why don't you try and make art, to the function train. And the function train makes a table, and then the fun train goes, that's shit, that's not art. You're wrong, it needs to be creative, art can't have function.
What
And
would
then
you rather someone made for you?
A table.
Or a pile of shit?
and it's just that the main like debate of the episode is function versus fun, but they lean so hard on fun and how if you make anything with any function it's not art. I was like, this is so mean. This is so rude to this one train.
That's such a weird thing to present to a 5-year-old.
For half an hour.
Yes.
Especially because we're trying to encourage more kids to go into STEM.
Yeah,
exactly.
Make that table.
All those engineering kids going, well, I guess I'm not fun.
Yeah, make that table.
It's true though.
Also, for a show about trains, you really like fun over function for trains. Like,
Trying to get those train kids to branch out a bit.
go and make piles of stuff.
I did. Do you remember the grass story?
Oh yeah, the piles of grass.
Yeah, just piles of grass. That's all we did.
I kind of wish that if my boss is listening to this, I kind of wish she gave us, do you know, like Golden's home.
Yes.
Can
Golden's
you
home.
like on a Wednesday afternoon, like go make a pile of stuff, Meg?
What was your chosen
Send
golden
your
time
pile.
activity? I was drawing.
Oh, plasticine. I hate plasticine now. I don't know
We
why
didn't
I
have
enjoyed
plasticine.
We had
it. I
plasticine.
hate
Oh.
touching it now. I don't know why I enjoyed it.
God, I wish we'd had
I
plasticine.
think I did drawing or reading or writing, because I think I showed you both these recently. Something that was an activity that I did and the children of my area did a lot, and I thought was maybe more common than it is we'd go into the forest. And
you'd see a wolf.
and they all
Dressed
came
as
out.
a grandma.
And they all came out different somehow.
I grew up in the countryside in the UK, and we'd go out into the forest, and
Well, the trees were calling to you, weren't they?
Yeah.
So, just whispering.
we'd go for a bear picnic. We'd go and we'd get logs and we'd arrange them. This sounds so culty almost. Arrange them in like hut shapes, like
Okay.
make a triangle around a tree, right? And then we'd get coniferous leaves and stick them to the outside and see who could make the best shelter. That's our piles of grass we made shelter.
I also grew up,
Function.
I also grew up in the countryside in the UK, and I had a bike.
Aww.
Bike. Your area is less forested than mine.
Yeah, but we were also a bit more normal than
You were growing barley.
Yeah, they put me to work a bit younger than you. They were like, took me to the docks, mate.
I grew up in
Got
a-
some fish.
Whereas us, we were like, can you just fuck off to the forest, maybe find your way home?
I grew up in a city and had a Nintendo DS Lite.
All right.
Ugh.
All right. All right. Kids and
This
their
is why
technology.
she has no imagination.
I also had a DS Lite, but I think I got one when I was like... Actually, no. I remember playing on it in a specific room of my junior school, which must have meant I had it in year 5.
I had a DS. I didn't get the light. I just had the chunky one.
What was the difference? I don't think I've ever seen a DS.
They were chunkier, basically.
Oh,
They-
actually,
they're
no, I
like
have seen a
beveled.
DS. It's like, yeah, beveled. It's like the top bit isn't the same size as the
No.
bottom
Yeah.
bit. Yeah.
What ugly wheels you've got. They're not ugly, they're caterpillars, said Terence. I can go anywhere, I don't need rails. I don't want to go anywhere, said Thomas. I like my rails, thank you.
So this chapter in this book, we tried to
obtain
it. We messaged oh god, what's she called? Shauna
Shauna.
Wilton. Sorry, Shauna. But yeah, you can't easily get hold of academic papers.
Well, usually I can, but
Yeah.
this one wasn't even on Sci-Hub, which was surprising. I went to go to ResearchGate, and that's just like waiting for Shauna to reply.
So I wanted to like raise the intellect of this episode by quoting from Shauna Wilton 2009, but we couldn't get it, so just take our word for it. The original show is really sexist.
There's a imposed gender hierarchical structure in the reading of the show is what the I think main takeaway from the chapter is.
Does anyone else not expect it to have this many issues? Like, it's got a massive gender issue. It's got a issue with conformity. It's right wing.
I think anything from before a certain time, I'm gonna just go in going, all right, what are they gonna make me feel angry about?
I mean, yeah, it was written in the 40s.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yes, I kind of did expect it to have these issues, but that's because I sort of read up on this like quite like years ago, so I was familiar with the problems going in, but like if I hadn't, that's because I have weird interests. That's all. That's just me.
I didn't expect some of the gender stuff, like, because I very vividly remembered incorrectly like one of the blue ones being called Emily.
Well, in the more recent ones, there is one called Emily.
There is? Okay. Then I think I was just projecting all Thomas I'd ever seen to all of Thomas that had ever existed.
Don't think Emily's blue, though.
That's your first mistake, Laura.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that.
No.
Yeah, I don't know. It is. I do find it a shock having grown up in the world that we've grown up in. When you look back at some of the other stuff, and you're presented with a. You think things are sexist now. You're presented with an attitude that is just so, like, unbeknownst to us. We have no idea.
Shall we finish with our old favourite?
Common Sense
Common
Media.
Sense Media. So what I've done this time is we've got bad reviews from the grown-ups, which we're going to read to some sad music, and we've got some good reviews from children, which we're going to read to happy music. From Rocco Wallaby, 12 years ago. How reliable is the Sodor Railway? I'll admit I was a fan of the show, but looking at most of the episodes from then to present day, there is one thing that irks me: the constant violence. Nearly one train per episode comes off the rails or has an accident, and every time, and I quote, "Luckily no one was hurt." What gives? Sir Topham Hatt is not at his best. Seeing as how nothing is done to prevent the accidents, come to think of it, what about the engineers? Sure, they perform their usual duties, but ultimately fail to keep their engines on the tracks.
Chucky of Ace H, 3 stars. Too immature. Personally, I disagree with the many chads saying that this is suitable for all ages. Do you see a normal adult watching such a childish TV show? It is probably too immature for children above 8 to 9 years old to watch. It's a very simple TV show and can easily brainwash and hinder children from growing up. This title has too much consumerism.
Joe's 31, 7 years ago. It's really good for children, but when you get older, it's terrible. It's a cute show, but there's a lot of crashes. 4 stars.
Alley 13, 11 years ago. Thomas is a poor role model. Awful, awful role models. Lots of nasty competitiveness between the trains. Thomas and others frequently shirk their responsibilities to compete against each other or to show off. Thomas never seems to learn a single lesson. 1 star.
Scout H, 7 years ago. Not educational. My 3.5-year-old stepson would watch this all day, every day with his mum. So when he came to my house, I allowed him to watch 1 episode a day with my 2-year-old. I sat down with them one day to watch it and realised that this show doesn't teach them anything. They don't focus in colours, letters, language, or anything. The only thing it maybe does is teach behaviour, but even then many of the characters are very rude to each other. He is 3.5 and can't see a single word except choo choo, so I know that him watching the show all day with her hasn't taught him anything either. The characters are cute, but I would not let my child watch again. 1 star.
Sorry, but my 3.5-year-old stepson is such a funny thing to say.
The characters are not cute.
All right, are we ready to hear from the kids?
Yeah.
Gamer Keeks YT, 8 months ago. 5 stars. This is all in capital letters. The GOAT of TV! If I were to only watch one show for the rest of my life, it would be Thomas or Sesame Street. Try not to get bored challenge impossible watching Thomas.
I don't understand this boy.
Alfie09, 4 years ago. Great for kids, but there are some crashes. Thomas the Tank Engine is a very popular TV show and is aimed at kids aged 3 to 7. But I would say 4+ because of one scene where Duck yells, "Shut up!" and then bashes into trouble trucks. Other violence includes trains crashing into each other, one scene including red oil coming out of the engine, not blood, of Gordon. This title has great messages, great role models, 3 stars.
Music Lovers Gig, 3 years ago. Not bad. Weird concept. Interesting show. 3 stars.
Battle Player, 4 years ago. It's a great show for everyone. It has great characters, great stories, etc. It's better than other shows because it's never politically correct. Because they are trains.
It's polity correct.
Oh, sorry.
Polity.
Sorry, polity correct. Because they are trains.
Raminator Springs, 4 years ago. Education and good. This reminds me of Cars, which is a great thing. 5 stars.
X Tynock, 2 years ago. I rated 5. This is very nice. I was kid since 5 to 9 years in 2011 to 2015. Old, I love Thomas and Friends. He has made my childhood. And OG, but this is safe for kids' education and good kids show. title has great messages, great role models, 5 stars.
And every letter, every word is
Yeah, pretty much.
capitalised.
Yeah. Someone's commented on one of the Big Cook Little Cook reels.
Just now.
Yeah, just now. And I think the caption is something like, "Oh, who remembers this?" And their comment is like, "Thumbs up. Big Chef, Little Chef." Big Chef, Little Chef.
Are we done with Thomas? I feel like
Yeah, I'm
we
done
really
with him.
ragged on it. Like, I actually really, really enjoyed doing the research for this one.
I think the background might be more interesting than the show
I think you might be right.
because we're not 5. And reading politically and cultural and social anthropologically into a show is more interesting than...
It is a rich text.
Yeah, it is a rich text. I just think that's a bit more interesting than the actual, like, plots of any episodes. My favorite was Haunted Henry.
Me too, I liked that one. It does say a lot about the time in which it was written.
I didn't watch
produced.
Haunted Henry.
Meg, can you explain? I've gone really period stupid.
I can't remember what happens in it. I just remember enjoying it the most.
They're in the dark, it's nighttime, and they're going through the dark forest from Snow White, and they come across a signal that's orange, which means caution.
Oh, is
ahead.
this not one of the classic ones?
This is one of the classic
Oh,
ones.
okay.
Yeah. That's one of the signals is yellow, which proceed with caution. And there's I've forgotten what the actual job title is, but one of the people that works on trains, his jacket is like hung up on a tree. And there's something else that also like gives the impression of a person, but there's no person.
This sounds fucking awesome.
This I googled best Thomas episodes, and this was like one for a lot of people.
I really want to see this.
And there's like a cottage nearby. Oh, it's one of the the buildings that are near train stations. One of those like little houses that are near train stations.
Signal house.
Yeah, maybe. And the lights are on, but no one's there. There's like other spooky shit going on, and they're like the train and the train drivers are all like spooked, and they're like talking to each other, going, "Oh, what's going on?" Nothing was going on. They just got spooked. As it turns out, as the person whose jacket was left eventually finds them. He's on one of those things, those like manual things that get and he's like, "What the fuck's wrong with you? It's yellow. You should have been cautious." Like, why don't you listen to the instructions I left behind, kind of thing.
"Be quiet," snapped Henry. "I'm not scared." But he was. A little later, the fog came down. As they approached the same area, they saw the amber light again. "Here we go," said Henry's driver. Then, unbeknown to Henry, the gates mysteriously closed by themselves, and the signal went red. The trucks had seen all, and they were spooked too. "Faster, faster! There's a ghost about!" "Stop! Stop!" yelled Henry. A mysterious figure watched Henry go by. Ahead was a landslide blocking the line.
That sounds so good. Like,
It is a good episode.
Watching it, I enjoy the vibes. I like horror.
If all the episodes were horror episodes, that'd be like a horror train show. That sounds amazing.
Like, I don't like it as a show, but I like it as a kind of weird little cultural artifact.
Yeah.
Like, I know that that's not what it is. It's a massive fuck-off franchise.
Yeah.
But that's not how I see it.
Laura did an interesting thing just now. She said it was dark, it was nighttime.
Oh my god!
Yesterday, she tried to convince us that dark equals nighttime. If it is dark, it is nighttime.
Because what were we? For some reason, we were discussing if it's dark at 4 p.m.
If it's dark at 4 p.m., it's still daytime.
It's still the afternoon. It's just dark. Just like in Iceland when it's light for half of the year. That's not one long day. Like one day, one night.
You'd have a radically different calendar.
I bet you can't believe I picked up on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite amazing.
I'm pissed. That's some Sean level shit.
So listen, we've done our round off of the episode.
What was your
Meg's,
favourite episode?
I don't know. Meg's,
Okay.
I mean, they all roll into
Meg,
one.
stop flicking your straw.
Meg's really ill. Laura's on her period. All of us are really hungry. We've got to go.
Delirium is setting in.
We've got to go.
I've been delirious this whole time. I'm so hot. I don't know what's going
it's
on.
Suddenly hot. It's April.
So Reverend, what's your name?
Reverend Train.
Wilbert. According to his biographer, the Tom Kenshin man. Thank you for your contribution to
Thank
the
you,
culture.
Reverend Man. What?
Thank you, Mr. Man, for writing.
Thank you, Father Train.
I mean, he wrote a whole book about a fictional island. His commitment to his own cringe is just... I love you for that. Thanks for listening, everyone.
you.
We're going to go.
Let's do the socials quickly.
Yeah,
now.
all right.
You can find us on TikTok at Thoughts TV Pod, Instagram at Thoughts TV, the O is a 0, on Twitter at Thoughts__TV. You can email us at thoughtstv2002@gmail.com. Have we got any others?
We have a Patreon now, and we have a Discord, both of which are
Well done, everyone.
linked on the socials.
Very impressive.
You can listen to these on anywhere you get your podcasts, or YouTube, where you can also watch the video episodes, the Young Dracula saga, the Tots TV episode.
Yes. On Patreon, the on Patreon, the episodes are ad-free.
Yes,
Yeah.
so if you are subscribed to our Patreon, you don't have to listen to the ads that you will have to listen to on any other podcast provider. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much.
Apply.
Conditions apply.
Please ask the bill payer's permission.
If you are under the age of 14, please have a parent present.
Right.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Sweet dreams.